Each year, Microsoft Research hosts hundreds of influential speakers from around the world, including leading scientists, renowned experts in technology, book authors, and leading academics, and makes videos of these lectures freely available.
Everyone, I think we're going to try and get started here. And I wanted to make probably 3 or 4 logistical announcements in the morning here, first thing. Just as a reminder, the bus will be leaving at 3:30 p.m. sharp. It will make a stop, just a drop at the Hyatt for the people that are returning to the hotel, and then it will go straight to the airport. Again, just to reiterate, hopefully you already have your bags, because we're not going to be able to have time for people to get their bags and get back on. So it'll be leaving at 3:30 sharp. If anyone has any questions, issues with hotel bills, I think there were a couple earlier. If there's any issues with billing or payment resolution, you can email. I'm going to give you an email right now. Jen Carr, JENCAR @Microsoft.com. If you have any issues, let me know, or let her know, actually. Announcement about the videos yesterday. So we heard from a few of the Macintosh contingent in the room, which would be about 85% of you, that there were some issues accessing the ASF video files. And I wanted to let you know that what we were able to do, the way we were able to get the videos up quickly was by using that format. We're going to now put all of them through our normal process at Microsoft, and probably within the week, they will be up in multiple formats that will allow different platforms to access them. Yes?
In the meantime, just download the DLC.
I'm sorry?
In the meantime, just download the DLC.
Okay, very good.
And there's other plugins which support the Windows Media thing within QuickTime as well, so
Okay.
it's very watchable.
Okay, very good. Okay.
We were thinking about getting everybody's laptop.
But so you know that within the week, it'll be easier for people to access them. And related to that point, we still need, I think there were like 20 people have not signed the release form that allows us to, in case your voice or your personage is captured on film, if you haven't signed a release form, I have a bunch here, and we need to hand those off to Jen. So I will pass them around, and if you need one, please fill it out and hand it to Jen at the front desk. All right. Those were the logistical points. Now we wanted to chat a little bit about the schedule. And I'm going to ask you, we're going to actually adjust the schedule. So if you have your agenda, I'm going to make some time changes. We're doing some real-time adjustments. We're going to obviously spend the next about half hour chatting and answering some questions, et cetera. So that time is going to stay the same. But you might notice the breakout sessions 3, the time is actually incorrect. And we need to switch that from 9:30 until 11:30. So the breakout sessions 3 will be 9:30 to 11:30. And that will be a time for the groups to get back together, the same groups that you were in the same rooms that you were in, and finalize the paper. So by the end of that, at 11:30, we need you to definitely have uploaded your writing, your document up to the Tumblr site. From 11:30 to 12:30, so the synthesis of ideas and recommendations, that 11:30 should be 11:30 to 12:30. That will be a working lunch. That's when you're expected to sit down with colleagues from other groups, kind of share information, tell people about the group, the work that you've done, but it's kind of a casual working lunch in that area. Then we're going to reconvene the final session. What we have here is group reporting and summary will be 12:30 to 3. So that's going to be a 2.5-hour block of time. And what we're going to do there is the designated reporter from each of the groups will have 10 minutes to summarize their group's presentation. They will have been posted to the Tumblr site, but then we're going to ask the designated person to report back for about 10 minutes and then have about 5 minutes for questions. Then after we've gone through all of those, Margie and myself and probably Alyssa will do some summary remarks along with Tony and try and bring us to closure and net out some next steps. So does that work in terms of schedule? Very good. All right. I guess the next thing to do is we had a few comments to make, and based on conversations that we had last night, we wanted to try and provide, I guess, some clarifications and then open the floor for additional questions that you might have today. Some of what we were kind of gleaning last night is that even though the groups are, groups of 10, 12 people, that there were in certain cases some dichotomies of expectations or what should be presented. And we wanted to try and clarify how to capture that. There was, in some cases, reports that groups were being very tactical and very functional, perhaps too much so, and other groups were being maybe a little bit too strategic and not practical enough. And I guess the guidance that we were hoping to provide is that we want you kind of first and foremost to aim for the practical, but not super ridiculously practical, but practical that, and help me out here, something that, again, someone would be able to use. I mean, as I would think of as like cliff notes for the researcher that may not be thinking about this on a day-to-day basis, but something that they could use. So not something that's too basic, but something that could be applied. But we do want, at the end of the day, in addition to that, we do want some level of strategic input. And by that we mean, I think the bullet point was talking about what are the gaps, what are the things that aren't there. We want you to spend some time calling that out. And so the strategic should be probably the gaps and the recommendations based on those gaps or potential, again, linkages between the tools. And so do you want to hop in there?
Well, I like drawing, so let me try drawing. So some of the groups that I talked to people from media, from literature, from platforms, and other groups. But let me just take those first three as examples. So let's say we have media here, literature here. Forgive me for not using a matching color scheme. Okay, so each of these groups, first of all, they had a lot of conversations, and same is true for, I know, resources also, but they had a lot of conversations trying to figure out what these one-word titles of their group meant. Okay, so that's fine. And again, the guidance is that it goes in line with the kind of demonstrations that you saw yesterday. Okay, but again, erring on the side of worrying about, of going into other groups' territory rather than just trying to narrowly confine your own is better. Don't worry. If there's overlap, we'll fix that later. Okay, so don't worry about that. No more conversation about that. Just talk about what you want to talk about. Then it was actually Josh Greenberg, when I was sitting in the media group, made a really good suggestion about trying to take this from a sort of bottom-up approach and sort of take simple tools and then see how those tools connect to each other. And then when they stop connecting into each other, they're in some fantastic ecosystem. That's when you've reached the strategy level of what's missing. Okay, and if you find stuff missing at a really low level, that's a problem. So what am I talking about in a more abstract way? In a more concrete way. I can't get more abstract. Anyway, so in media, let's say that you're talking about the lowest level tool, okay, the weeds, as it were. Okay, so let's say in media you're talking about screen capture software. Okay, in literature, an equivalent would be, vanilla Microsoft Word. Okay, in platforms, a vanilla thing would be, say, Twitter. Okay, so this, I'm going to go from the top to the bottom, but I mean it from the bottom up. It's just hard to see the bottom. Okay, so these are the sort of lowest level things. And then, okay, well, like a higher level thing would be, screen capture for demos. I'll just say for demos, screencast, right? So the kind of thing where you add the ability to follow the cursor and zoom in, which, by the way, we didn't see a lot of people using yesterday when they showed recorded demos. But you've seen these really beautiful demos that a lot of very rich software companies will put online, or very clever software developers, where they follow the mouse on the screen and that zooms in, or it's highlighted, or there's the ability to annotate it on top of the video. Okay, so we'll call this, the next level sort of rich video. Okay, so there's things like annotation in the video. Right? And then you have these things, right? And then another level is you want to distribute them, right? Right? And so you have simple things like YouTube, right? But then you have, like, what if you want a community to understand that, or you want preservation? And then you would get to something like Jove, okay, that we saw yesterday, right? But somebody can't have any idea that they can contribute something fantastic to Jove if they can't even know how to capture their screen, and if they can't know what kind of screen capture is better or not better. And Jove is maybe a bad example because a lot of the video there is actually live video, not screen capture video, but I think you get what I'm talking about. Okay, and then the sort of, where does this lead? Okay, once everybody's really capable at these things and you have platforms like Jove and things fancier than YouTube and Vimeo and whatever, where does that go? Okay, but the next few years are people transitioning into knowing how to do all of this stuff, right? And what we're trying to do is teach them how to do all of this stuff and say, well, why would you want to do each of these things? You know, what's the purpose of each of those levels? And then Lee's question about strategy and where does this go is this question mark at the end. And so, you know, I could try and write out examples for all the other ones, but, you know, Microsoft Word, and then you could have, you know, Chem for Word kind of things, you know, and then you could have, you know, fancy semantic annotation things. And then, you know, what does that enable for journals? You know, and then you have examples like PLOS and the alternate level metrics that are enabled by more rich documents with more metadata. And so there's a little bit of, you know, this part is sort of how, and then it sort of morphs into why, right? We're not interested, I'm sorry to the publishers, but we're not interested in how the publishers are going to do this. We're interested in if the researchers do this, what can the publishers do, okay, in the end. And so that's sort of the why of what the researchers would want to do. So that statement of, you know, why would you want to take the extra time to use a tool that'll make nice semantic data for the publishers or for whoever is going to use that information later on, right? But this kind of flow from, you do not have to tell people how to use Microsoft Word. I think you can put a check there. But, you know, why would they want to use plugins? Why would they want to think about developing plugins for their field, okay? And what are examples of the kind of things that already exist now, and what does that enable? And over here, you know, you can think about things like Twitter, and if you just say, you know, Twitter plus a hashtag is a whole different world. In other words, people who don't use Twitter, including me a lot of the time, okay, because I just don't have time, but people who totally don't use Twitter have no idea, okay, why it would even be useful, okay? And they don't understand that you could have, for example, a hashtag for a meeting that would then let you find a running commentary of what went on at the meeting, which is preserved. They don't understand that there are platforms which then will suck in Twitter through some sort of API, and then in somebody's blog or in some group's discussion of something else, there can be a Twitter feed from all of the people participating in the group, no matter what they're talking about. They don't understand that this is going to the Library of Congress, okay, as a record of what's going on in society, right? So people don't know that, right? And what's going to become of the Library of Congress? Not of the Library of Congress, but of the Twitter feed in the Library of Congress? Who knows? I don't know. But in other words, the capturing of social media as a discourse about science is something that's a sort of strategic long-term question that's interesting that your two-page document can kind of lead to or conclude with. I'm not saying that somebody should write an entire two-page document about Twitter, okay? But this is a way that you might be able to guide the conversations and have the groups that we hear are, you know, some people talking in the clouds and some people not quite at the Microsoft Word level, but at the, you know, we need a list of every possible application that does all these things. You don't need to cover, you know, every possible software package or system that people might want to use. You really want exemplars. And if you can add links to other ones without describing them, you can say such as link, 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 as long as you explain one of them, okay? So that's my guidance to you. And I think Lee and I would like to answer questions from people in the individual groups, and then of course we'll go around and float around in the groups and see what we can do again. So, questions? Complaints? Other comments?
Come on, people.
Coffee? More coffee? Curtis.
Question about focus.
Yeah.
I mean, I think we can get to like what are the top three, but I think in our discussions we have sort of a longer list of things from which there's some exemplars, but then there are other sort of interesting examples, and do we need to articulate the background behind all those of the how and the why, et cetera?
That's a good question. So the question is, if you have too many things on your sort of list of things that you've discussed in exemplars, what do you do about that? And I think that it would be good to record somewhere, here's the stuff we didn't put in this document, just so that you have a list of those links. And so I think it would be fine.
An appendix.
Right. If groups want to do that, take your 2 pages of, if I only had 2 minutes with the president of a university, and I want that university president to understand what it is that I'm going to be telling their researchers, and I just have those 2 minutes, and so I only have 2 pages. Or better yet, if I only have 2 minutes with that researcher, and they're only going to listen to me for 2 minutes, what do I want to tell them? Okay, and that's what goes in the 2 pages, or the 5 pages, if Lee has his way. And then the extra
Being
stuff,
realistic.
don't just throw it out. Say, here's a bunch of other things we discussed.
Yep.
Link, 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 one sentence, one sentence, one sentence, and it doesn't have to be so organized. You could even have 2 different people write the 2 different things. There's a lot of nodding, okay? Hope that solves the problem. Okay, good question, Curtis. Anything else? Any comments? Just other people thinking, no? You're all good? Okay, great. Go have a nice time.